So what are the biggest changes? What are the three things that employers really need to know about when it comes to this legislation? So the first thing is transparency. Any role based in an EU member state has to give a pay range upfront during the hiring process. I'm going to go into this a little bit in a little bit more detail in the next slide, but what is acceptable right now, which are things like saying depending on experience or competitive salary, or very, very, very wide ranges that say DOE from 25,000 to 175,000 are no longer going to be no longer going to be enough. There needs to be a pay range provided upfront. So that's during the hiring process, and internally, existing employees are going to have the right to request information about their pay. So this is their pay range in relation to people doing similar roles. So their gender pay, the average pay by gender, and also they have the right to understand how pay is determined. So companies need to be clearly articulate how they assess like for like roles and how they stand behind pay. So your philosophy to pay. Another big change, particularly when it comes to hiring, is that there is going to be a pay history ban. So you are no longer going to be able to ask potential candidates what their salary expectations are during hiring. You have to provide that range up front. You can ask them whether that falls in line with their expectations, but the reason to this is to stop people from continually being underpaid. Alongside this, if you put an initial range in a job advert, will no longer be able to offer less than that initial range without a legitimate reason. So that would be fundamentally hiring that person to do a lesser role as you define it and being able to articulate that clearly. But if you are hiring them for the job that you have advertised, you cannot pay less than that initial range. The last one here, which is going to probably be a big one for a lot of companies, is reporting. So the deadlines for reporting aren't the 6th of June. They're staggered depending on the size of your company. But under the directive, there's going to be mandatory gender pay gap reporting. One of the big differences, many countries do this already, is that where you identify a gender pay gap of over 5% or more, it must be addressed. So you can't just say, we know that we have a gender pay gap. You have to make a move and a plan to close that gap. For all of these things, failure to adhere to them can be a finable offence. Member states are really going to have that discretion in setting penalties, but the overarching framework really allows for sanctions where necessary for repeated offences. I do want to say that, look, these things take time. It's probably likely not going to come in overnight, that there's going to be massive fines. Companies will have a time to go with it, but there are quite significant potential fines. So if you find gender discrimination that hasn't been addressed or hasn't been done properly over a significant period, the EU directive has said that employee payouts are uncapped. So local laws are not allowed to cap those payouts as they do in other areas.